you. A little weight on that one. How do we know that we're adults? Is it because we passed that particular birthday? Or is it because we have a job and we know we're responsible and we pay our bills? Or is it because we know we got the right clothes? Most of our thinking habits and patterns were created at a time when our brain was half-baked and we were completely flooded with hormones. Our human brains are not fully developed until our mid-20s. But by then, we think we know what we're doing. We don't consider it anymore. The good news is that we do have in here a prefrontal cortex. That's what I'm calling the adult brain. It has amazing functions, but we need to train it. It doesn't know what to do if we don't train it. I was raised in California. I had a lot of opportunity to train myself in various ways, to do personal development work. I began my search when I was about 24 years old. At the time, I was an engineer. I was working for the United States Navy, hunting submarines. Now, that work, my life, it didn't quite fit me. Things weren't feeling right. I wanted to understand myself. I wanted to understand what this life was about. So I started on the self-help aisle of the bookstores, and then I moved to various kinds of therapy and different programs, all so I could find out, who am I? And more importantly, why am I such a mess? Along the way, I discovered my inner child. I discovered my inner goddess. I found my inner game. I visualized, I chanted, I journaled. I joined groups of people. We sat in circles. We lit candles and incense, and we talked about our feelings in soft, breathy voices. I continued my journey. I learned yoga and meditation. I joined a program on Eastern philosophy, complete with the guy in the white robes offering special teachings. We practiced mantras and other techniques to train ourselves. We were training ourselves in self-love and positive thinking. So I know it sounds California touchy-feely. It was, yeah. But you know what? It was the most practical and useful set of things I've ever done. With all of that training, I managed to get in control of my mind rather than it being in control of me. I managed to overcome an eating disorder, drinking too much, being angry at everyone all the time, and procrastinating. Really useful. I was surprised to find out 15 years later that what I was doing was really training my adult brain. I was studying neuroscience in the last year, and I saw in the neuroscience studies so many of the same techniques I had learned in California were really about the human brain. I'd like to share with you some of those, a comparison between a few of those things. So in California, I learned to stop and feel my feelings, which was helpful. It helped me with some of that anger stuff I had. In neuroscience, I learned a very practical technique that if you want to stop a reaction of the brain, you need to pause and label your feelings. A couple different words, same thing. In California, I learned that there's a fear-based force within us that will run us if we let it. In neuroscience, I learned about the limbic system. The limbic system is what I'm calling the teenage brain. It's all about our survival. And for humans, survival also includes belonging. And anytime this limbic system, or teenage brain, perceives a threat to our survival, it reacts with fear. Fight, flight, freeze, appease. Classic fear responses. This limbic system, teenage brain, it is the fear-based force within us. It's within us. It will run us if we let it, but it's human, and we need to learn how to work with it. One other thing I learned, well, many other things I learned, but one more I'll share with you, is that if we change our thoughts, we change our feelings, and that'll change our behaviors. Kind of seem like magic, but it's actually science. If we change our thoughts, we change our brain. And when we change our brain, we change our behaviors. We change what we do. We change how we feel. We can change what we perceive as a threat. So all of these things, changing our perceptions, changing our thoughts, these are all functions of what I call the adult brain. The prefrontal cortex is the most evolved part of our brain. It doesn't finish its generation and all until our mid-20s, as I said. But it's amazing. This is the part of our brain that helps us focus, helps us stay focused, like moving towards a goal. It helps us manage that limbic system. It gives us discipline, helps us have delayed gratification, and many other things. It's amazing. The problem is, it's lazy. It's lazy, and it's a bit slow, and it needs to be trained. But it can be strengthened. Neuroscientists are showing us we can strengthen this part of our brain. We don't have to have a California experience. You don't need the guy in the white robes and the special teachings and the candles and incense and soft, breathy voices. What we need is to pay attention, to have awareness, to get some training, and to practice. There was in San Quentin Prison, California. There was a group of inmates, all different colors, races, sizes, sentences, tattoo patterns. There were some scary-looking dudes there, but they were there because they wanted to help. I was there to teach them some coaching skills. They wanted to learn to coach because they wanted to help youth at risk. So they were hungry to learn. We spent this first day of that training having them look at their strengths. What was positive about them, their positive qualities? What was strong about them? How could they contribute? They each came up with their own personal list, and they learned how to see strengths in one another. Yeah, it was beautiful and amazing, this whole process of them learning these skills. At the end of the day, this one young man, Mario, young Hispanic man, he came up to me and he had tears at the bottom of his eyes and such hope on his face. And he showed me this list of his. And he said, is it possible that some of these positive things could be true about me? Caring, compassionate, considerate, wise. Of course. I just wanted to give him a hug, but we weren't allowed to touch the inmates. Mario had grown up in the streets. He'd learned his whole life that he was expendable, worthless. That wasn't something he chose. It was his identity. That identity created his behaviors, which landed him in jail. Not a surprise. He thought it was his identity and his destiny to be there. That's just what happens. Until this day when he saw this list. It transformed him. With these positive qualities, he had a new identity. He could do different things. He could contribute. How many of you have some feeling, some level inside you, where you feel like maybe you're not good enough, and maybe you might be found out, if you're willing to raise your hands? Yeah, it's common, and we're in really good company. Not just with inmates, but with a whole lot of executives and people who run this world. I was working with a group of executives, and over half of them admitted that they felt like frauds in their executive positions. They felt like frauds, and they were afraid of being found out. Another group of executives, 9 out of 10, leaders in organizations, admitted that they were still trying to prove themselves to their father. All of these men, they happened to be all men, they admitted that they were making decisions, business decisions, based on their own personal fears, their fears of being found out. They were trying to hide their inadequacies and prove themselves as powerful. This is teenage brain stuff. This is what our teenage brains do. We have to prove ourselves. We have to be better than. We have to be good enough. When I think about the number of decisions that are made by leaders in organizations and the amount of decisions that affect whole companies and whole countries based on people trying to prove themselves as worthy, it's staggering and absolutely frightening. Our thoughts, our beliefs create our behaviors. We need to get it. I was in Aix-en-Provence, France, in an open-air food market, shopping for vegetables, focusing on speaking French. It was a beautiful summer day, very crowded marketplace. And there I was buying vegetables when all of a sudden I felt a hand pass by my backside. And I thought, okay, what's going on here? And I turned and I looked, and there was this guy moving that way, kind of walking a bit like a Hulk with his arms out like this. And I thought, okay, well, the market's crowded. It was an accident. He didn't mean it. He's squeezing between the people, and that was just a brush. A few minutes later, at the different vegetable stall, same thing. And my mind snapped. This guy is a creep. He's offended me. I don't like it. He's not going to get away with it. And most of all, he must be punished. I grabbed my charming little French shopping cart that was full of all kinds of great stuff. And I wheeled around the marketplace, and I found him. And I nonchalantly ran over his foot, which was only wearing flip-flops. And he, of course, threw a tantrum, and he screamed, and he yelled at me, and creating quite a scene. And I was over here a little afraid. But also, underneath that, I was proud. You can relate, can't you? I'd gotten him back. I'd gotten him back. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd proved myself worthy. I had done it. I showed him I'm powerful, and it feels good. Well, this, my friends, is my teenage self. She felt a threat. She responded with fight. She likes that fight. And this feeling of power, it's a mix. It's adrenaline, but it's also dopamine. And dopamine is a great thing. It's our body's way of having us feel good. It's a reward system. I know at some level I indulge in dopamine because it feels good. It's powerful, and it feels good. But you know what? It's these kind of indulgences that create violence, that create hostility, dirty politics, nasty competition, unnecessary competition, and even war. We know we need to do something different. And it needs to start with ourselves. I'd like to take you on a little experience, if you're willing, so you can check out your teenage brain and your adult brain. So I'm going to ask you to recall a situation in your life, maybe something recurring, perhaps something that happens at work, something that upsets you. Maybe your reputation is at stake or something is unfair. So think of a situation and really put yourself in it and let yourself feel it. And now imagine that you can do anything you want, and there will be no retribution, nobody's going to get fired, nothing's going to happen to you. Would you fight? Would you run? Would you appease, try to make everything nice, to control everything and make it nice? Anybody feel some of those chemicals? Some of that feeling? This is your teenage brain. There's nothing wrong with the teenage brain. It's there in all of us. We just need to learn about it. So now take that situation and set it aside. Take that scene and set it aside. And I'm going to ask you to take a breath. Breathing is good. I know it's a California thing, but it's okay. It's okay. It actually flushes out some of those teenage brain chemicals, settles down some of the adrenaline and all that. Taking a breath is good. You ready for the next step? I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. This is also a real thing. Closing your eyes shuts off the visual processing center of the brain and allows the adult brain to focus. So you close your eyes and take a breath. And now imagine that scene again. Without judgment. There's no good, no bad, no right, no wrong. Just observe what happens in that scene. And now put yourself back in the scene, in your own shoes. Be in the scene without judgment. There's no good or bad or right or wrong. Just notice. And while you're there in your own shoes, notice your thoughts. What are you thinking? Without judgment. What are the thoughts that occur to you in that scene? This place you're in, I wish I could keep you there for minutes or hours. It's a great thing to practice. This is called non-judgmental awareness. It's the basis of neuroscience. Neuroscientists say that this place of non-judgmental awareness will grow the capacity of your adult brain. You can practice this. In the middle of one of those scenes, in the morning when you're on the tube or the bus, it's a great practice that actually grows the adult brain. Now I imagine that most of you recalled a scene that involved other people. It's because we're social beings and we have a social brain. Neuroscientists say that most of our brain is dedicated to being in relationship. It's not a computer. It's about relationship. Both the adult brain and the teenage brain are wired to be in relationship, but they're a little different. The teenage brain is quite fast. It likes to have power over, it likes to control, it likes to dominate, be better than. The adult brain is slower. It's more thoughtful, compassionate. With the adult brain, we have the capacity for paradox. I can have my ideas, and you can have your ideas, and they might be very different. But we can share them. We don't have to be right. We can share them together. And it's this place, when we share our ideas together, and we manage that teenage brain, because we know it's there. We manage it. We don't let it run the show. We're in collaboration. This is the place I really believe that when we're together and we let this part of our brain work, we will create new solutions. Because we work really well together. Just we've got to stop reacting to one another. My dream is that we create cultures where personal development is normal, where we can get back to our adult brain and adult thinking is normal, where we collaborate in our work cultures. Let's rediscover what it is to be human, what it is to be adults together. Let's rediscover what it is to be adult together. Let's train our adult brains together, because from there we can change the world. Thank you.